Mouse techniques are something that you need to get used to if you're going to spend any time whatsoever using a personal computer. And I know that if you're not used to it, it can take a little bit of practice in order to get good and efficient with it, because it does require a little bit of hand and eye coordination. So I don't want anybody to feel bad if at first you feel a little clumsy working with a mouse. You just have to trust me when I say that if you practice just a little bit, pretty soon you'll be mousing away like it was nothing. So let's talk about a few of these different skills as well as the parts of the mouse so you understand what the terminology is and what you actually do with the mouse itself. First of all, we'll talk about moving the cursor. With a regular mouse, you move the cursor by physically moving the mouse with your hand in the desired direction. So as you're looking at the screen, actually put your hand down on the mouse, make it comfortable, and then you're simply going to move the mouse using your elbow and your shoulder. If you run out of room on your desktop or on your mouse pad, it's okay to pick up the mouse and actually put it back so that you have more room to move in the direction you need to. If you're using a trackball, the thought is the same, except remember that with a trackball, you never physically move the trackball itself, meaning the whole thing. What you do is you simply roll the ball with your finger. Depending on which version you have, you're either going to move it with your thumb or probably your index or your middle finger. Rolling the ball is similar to physically moving the mouse with a typical mouse. If you have a touchpad or a touch screen, you're going to drag your finger on the pad in the direction you want to move. So if I wanted to move the cursor from the lower left corner to the upper right corner, I would place my finger on the pad, and with my finger still touching the pad, I would physically drag my finger from the lower left to the upper right corner. Again, if you need to reorient or you run out of room, it's okay to pick your finger up and move it back down or up in the direction that you need to. And if you have that eraser head on your laptop, you're just going to pivot it by pushing it in the direction that you want it to go. So again, if the cursor is currently in the lower left part of the screen and you want to move to the upper right, you would put your finger on the very top of the eraser head and simply push it up and to the right. If you're using graphics tablets or some other mobile devices that might let you use a stylus, then you're going to touch the stylus to the pad or the screen and drag it in the desired direction, very similar to a touchpad and a touchscreen. Moving the cursor is probably one of the most basic and fundamental things that you will need to learn on a computer. Regardless of which type of mouse or pointing device you use, this is really a critical skill. So if it's not very familiar to you, just take some time to practice. After we move the cursor, then we can start talking about those buttons and wheels. As I said before, almost every mouse, whether it's a mouse, a trackball, a touchpad, or any of those, is going to have some type of a button, usually a left or primary and a right or secondary. The left button is going to select things, and the right button is always going to display a shortcut menu. And we'll take a look at that shortcut menu when we actually show you some things on the Windows 7 desktop. Most mice these days also have something called a scroll wheel. Now I want to just tell you that if you're using a touchpad on a laptop, for example, it of course doesn't have a wheel, a physical wheel that sticks up, but usually the right edge of the touchpad has a scrolling capability. What that means is, if you actually have a wheel on the mouse, you're going to roll that backwards and forwards. If you have a touchpad, you're going to place your finger on the far right side of the pad and simply drag your finger up and down the right edge. You also might have a tilt wheel. Now you won't have this on a touchpad, but it might be on a regular mouse. This is actually something that instead of just going forward and back, goes left and right. The scroll wheel scrolls the screen up and down, so if you're reading a multi-page document, you can scroll through it very easily. And the tilt wheel scrolls the screen left to right, so if your entire document, for example, doesn't fit horizontally on the screen, you can scroll left and right to see the different edges. Let's take a look at what some of this is. Here we can see a mouse with the left and right mouse buttons identified for you. I think that one's pretty basic. Now let's talk about that scroll wheel. Here we have a scroll wheel right in the middle, and if you were going to use that scroll wheel, you would simply roll it backwards and forwards. This would scroll your screen up and down. If your mouse also has tilt capabilities, it's going to look the same. But in this case, that scroll wheel not only moves up and down, it also moves left and right. And by tilting it left and right, you'll scroll horizontally on your screen. Hopefully these illustrations will make it a little bit easier to understand what we actually want to do once we get onto the computer screen itself. After we get beyond how to move the cursor, how to click the buttons and how to use a scroll wheel, then we need to know about clicking and dragging. To click is to simply press a mouse button. We will do a lot of single clicking, which just means press and release the button. You also will need to do some double clicking, and double clicking means to click the button twice in a row, quickly, without pausing in between. Usually you only double click with the left mouse button. You don't usually double click the right button. It's important to remember with a double click that you want to do it fairly quickly, and I'm going to show you how to adjust the mouse, so if you can't do it very quickly, you'll still be able to let the computer know what a double click is. The reason I say that is if you don't double click quickly enough, the computer interprets it as 2 single clicks, and when we get on screen we'll show you why that can be a problem. Then we get to one of my favorite concepts, which is called drag and drop, or sometimes called click and drag. They're both the same thing. This means that you actually want to press and hold the left mouse button, and while you're holding that left mouse button down, you're going to physically move the mouse. Once you get the mouse where you want it to go, then you release the button. So you're going to select something, you're going to drag it to a new location, and then by releasing the mouse button, you will drop it, which is why they call it drag and drop or click and drag. These are all very basic mousing techniques, but we want to make sure that you're very comfortable with them because you will use them virtually everywhere on a computer these days. So let's take a few minutes to actually take a look at how we might utilize clicking, dragging, dropping, left clicks, right clicks, and all those other things.